AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
Okay, we're going to start this morning with the Irish Independent back page. Damien Fitzhenry speaking there. Leinster relegation is shame of hurling. He reckons that these are teething problems, really. I mean, when you drill down into the story, he basically is saying that he doesn't think that there should be a team relegated in Leinster and that it's something that they'll work out over a period of time. Interesting story from Miguel Delaney there, that Spurs are interested in getting Gareth Bale back. I think that makes a lot of sense from Spurs' perspective, trying to sign somebody who will be a season ticket seller for the new stadium, and to finally remove that notion of them not being a team who are interested in spending money. Like, it feels like all of the penny pinching over the years from Daniel Levy has been about getting them to the point where they were able to compete, and now the Premier League is so profitable that they could spend money on Gareth Bale and actually make a load of money off that transfer in a way that wouldn't have been possible maybe even 5 years ago with the way the TV rights and also their own stadium situation. The other story there on the back of the Irish Independent is about Martin O'Neill saying that Championship football is no preparation for Ireland. It's a massive step up. It's incredible. You're talking about the opposition on Monday. The French players were athletic and lean and brilliant on the ball, and that's not the player, with respect, that young Brown is playing against every single week. This is just Alan Brown from Preston stepping up to face, Pogba and Griezmann and whoever it was that were playing for France. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in with Ireland at the moment. And I think at some point, do we just have to accept that it's going to be a while before Ireland can be competitive again?
Yeah, well...
Or do we look at Iceland and go...
a long time ago.
Well, why are Iceland successful? Why were Wales successful enough to the point where they were able to reach a semi-final of the Euros? Granted, they didn't qualify for the World Cup, but Iceland have backed up what they did at the Euros by qualifying for the World Cup. That's the problem with international football, is that lower quality players in a good team with a uniformity of purpose and identity can overperform their relative league standing.
For sure, there is an element of talent, though. There is an element of uniformity of purpose when it comes to developing young players, and it seems that football has completely stood out as the only real national game where Iceland will big up their opportunities of bringing these players through to the very top level. We've looked at this before on the show, where the amount of actual, I suppose, top-class facilities per capita in Iceland is outstanding. They've really put an effort in to make sure that if there is any bit of gold dust in the talent, around Iceland, that they will be nurtured and they will be brought to the next level as a footballer. Whereas at Wales, it kind of feels that there are competing sports and this is a once-in-a-lifetime generation. And not qualifying for the World Cup, by the way, is a bit of an underachievement for this Wales team. Every year that you have Gareth Bale and you don't qualify for a World Cup is an underachievement.
Yeah, it's like being Barcelona and not winning the Champions League when you've got Leo Messi in your team. Okay, so let's move on to the Times. This is the Times Ireland edition. O'Neill issues challenge to Ireland squad. It's effectively the same. If you look at the two teams, the calibre of the opposition and the choice we have, the players we have in the leagues they're playing in, I don't think it's a major surprise that we lost. Having said that, when we have the ball, we have to try and use it a bit better instead of hoofing it forward. He didn't say instead of hoofing it forward, but pictures of Serena Williams, the same picture basically on the back of the Irish Independent and the Times Ireland edition. And then Mark McCall, the news is through that Saracens have signed him and his backroom team up all the way to 2022. Some people thought that maybe he'd be in the running for the Joe Schmidt gig after the World Cup, but it never really felt like that was something that he was interested in. And he's gone on the record as saying that when you're in a situation like you are at Saracens, you have to stop and realise that this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And why do you always want to move? Why is always the next thing better automatically? And somebody else was quoted, and it was a good quote, as saying, for Mark McCall, it's not always all about him, which isn't necessarily the way that things roll at international level. You kind of need that giant ego.
The Mark McCall thing seems like a real 2015 story, doesn't it? When Leinster and Ireland weren't failing, but Leinster were failing, and I felt like we need to get some more of the expertise that's been nurtured from a rugby standpoint on this island back into this country, and Mark McCall was viewed as one of those people. 2 years, 3 years down the line, you're like, we don't really need Mark McCall anymore. Andy Farrell is going to become the next Joe Schmidt, potentially Stuart Lancaster, if you manage to nurture some really good coaching talent in Leinster, could become the next Ireland coach. It's probably going to be Andy Farrell, though, at this point of view. So we don't need Mark McCall anymore. It's the long and short of it, really.
Or both of them. Who knows?
It's kind of like we've got a new friend now. We don't care about our former friend.
Yeah,
that's no
it's
longer
good that there's
cooler.
loads of people though, because who knows, the job after that could obviously be interesting and available from a 4-year cycle after that. After the World Cup in France, it is France, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the World Cup
Remember,
after that's going to be
2023.
Apparently. Okay, so the Irish Times next. This is, so we don't have a PDF of this one, so you're going to have to try and squint there. Clock is already ticking on Kerry's young guns. I'll come back to that in a minute. Fitzmaurice praises contribution of basketball coach Weldon. This is interesting. It's like a couple of years after Dublin got their basketball coach, Kerry have theirs. Every manager likes to believe they're bringing something different into the championship. Eamon Fitzmaurice is no exception. So obviously they had a raft of talented new youngsters come through last year, but they've also added a basketball coach. So the tactical nuances of Kerry against Dublin whenever they meet in this year's championship is going to be pretty impressive.
They might not meet. Sure, wasn't Nathan saying that Mayo? Oh no, he wasn't saying that. He was saying that Mayo would beat Kerry if they happened to meet. Mayo could probably just scupper the plans of Kerry versus Dublin yet again. So could Galway. So I wouldn't be guaranteed that we're going to get a Kerry-Dublin meeting this summer.
We would expect it to be in the All-Ireland final. Are they slated to meet in the final or semi-final?
In the final, if you assume they both top their Super 8 groups.
Yeah, well, that's just for this purposes of argument, and as opposed to
QTourism.
yeah, exactly. That's where they're supposed to.
Yeah, no, genuinely, yeah. If they top Super 8 groups, which you'd expect they would do given Mayo's struggles at the moment, it'll be a Kerry versus Dublin All-Ireland final. Okay, and you think they're going to win the All-Ireland this year? I just want to get that on the record. You've been banging around, wondering, you haven't snapped this to your DCU buddies, but you think Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland this year? That's because Johnny Cooper runs the actual account. But I do think Dublin are going to win the All-Ireland. I do think Kerry are the second best team and are best placed to beat them this year.
And are much closer than everybody else thinks.
Yes, I really do believe that Kerry have been downplayed beautifully, actually. I'm very happy with this. Well, not really, but the part of me is fuming, actually, that Kerry have been written off to this point where...
It's a perfect situation.
It's perfect. It is a perfect situation.
Pissed off that they're getting written off, and yet you're delighted that they've been written off.
Yes, it's all the emotions in one. It's fantastic.
The perfect GAA scenario. It's like, they don't believe in us. Woohoo, they don't believe in us.
Like, some people would have had them as fourth favourites. So, some people are giving Galway kind of a leg up on Kerry at this point. Some people are giving Tyrone a higher ranking than Kerry at the start of the season, which is clearly nonsense. Like, that being said, Kerry could put in a terrible performance this Sunday. They probably won't get knocked out, but they could win by only a couple of points and people will suddenly start to turn around. It would be even more perfect. Exactly, it would be even more perfect.
Imagine if somehow a scenario exists where somehow Cork are favourites for the Munster final. Or it's a pick'em game. Everybody's like, what's going on here?
You'll never guess what happened the last year. Kerry limped past Clare in a Munster Championship match.
They won the All-Ireland?
They won the All-Ireland 2014. Last year, they were limping for a little bit, but they pulled away in the end. 2014, there was columns written bemoaning the lack of talent coming through in Kerry and almost being fed up with how crap Kerry were, despite the fact that it was only June. It had only just crossed the middle of June, and people were saying that they were bored of the lack of having Kerry as the aristocrats of football. And then 4 months later, they were All-Ireland champions, so that made that the sweetest of all. Of course it did. There is an element of that again this year, but I think some people are wise to the fact. Who was it in last week who was saying that, no, Kerry are going to go a lot further than a lot of people think? I can't recall who that was, but I think they're right when they say that. I think they're the second best team in the country.
And you actually believe that the combination of youngsters that they have and experienced players is kind of perfect. So talk to us about Darius Collin, because that's kind of the point that kicked us off on this. The clock is ticking on Kerry's young guns. He's making the point that when he came through, nobody knew that much about him. He'll be grand in a couple of years. He's kicked a bit of ball under 21, and when he fills out and gets his man strength, he's going to be useful for us. Whereas now, David Clifford has a highlight reel, mostly from Croke Park, and with a bunch of different teams, so expectation level is stratospheric.
For sure. He makes one very valid point in his... He makes multiple valid points, but the best point he makes, Dara, today is that when you're playing minor football, there's just not a systemic approach to the way you approach minor football. It's a mercenary approach where you've got a different group of players every year almost, and you will play off-the-cuff football to a certain extent, far more than you would see in senior inter-county Gaelic football. These players have to adjust to playing in a system. Whether or not that system will suit them then is an entirely different matter. I watched David Clifford play against Clare in the Munster minor final last year when he was single marked for the entire match. They didn't put a second man on him. They brought a sweeper back. It was completely ineffectual. But Clare single marked David Clifford for the entire game, and I think he scored a couple of goals and a handful of points. That has been the problem or the kind of feeling in your stomach when you've been watching David Clifford at minor level, that he's been having it quite easy tactically. I'm not saying just not physically, but tactically he's had it very, very easy. They never even tried to double mark him in a Munster minor final, which is an absolutely shocking indictment of that management last year. So the very basics of management will improve when it comes to the opposition. The physicality will obviously improve. And when it comes to defensive tactics, they are going to be far more nuanced, far more highbrow than what anything he's ever seen. So it is, the talent is there, of course it is. How quickly can they adjust to being cogs in a system? That remains to be seen. So it's a good column, but it is interesting that the headline is "Clock is already ticking on Kerry's young guns." I mean, it tells you all you need to know about the pressure that's there.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, it's pressure that's only pressure because they've been really good, and there's been enough of them who have shown up in the league that you think, and with the background in under 21 and minor football, you think, okay, there's it's been a proper draft class. Effectively, this Kerry team is a completely different team from the last couple of seasons. They have a massive infusion of talent, and you're talking about Fitzmaurice with the basketball coach. He's obviously gone away and had a long, hard look at exactly what was happening and what Dublin were doing and what they're supposed to be doing. And they're coming with a different crew and potentially a different style of play. And when that happens, and when they do it so under the radar as they have been, it must be dangerous.
Of course it is. Like, I think a lot of respect has to go to Eamon Fitzmaurice for the way he's ruthlessly culled a number of his stalwarts over the past couple of years. Like, you're talking about 10 top players over the last 2 or 3 seasons that have retired or have been told, listen, you're not going to be part of the panel. Stalwarts is a little bit strong, but certainly people that you would have expected to be seeing game time in 75, 80 minutes in Croke Park against Dublin. So he's very clearly, deliberately gone out of his way to make sure that this is going to be a new Kerry team. He's going to, like, he has said to himself, I'm not going to rest on my laurels, which is the 2014 team, some of the talent which I unearthed myself, and we were going to proceed with them, and, you know, kind of be a bit stubborn to the infusion of minor talent. I'm going to take this minor team, and they're going to be the ones who dictate who's going to be playing the game. I think it's an open-minded approach.
Kerry are best price 5-1 to win the All-Ireland, right? That's
really?
Yeah.
That's a good bet, but I do think, and it's not being kind of cliche Kerry, I do think it is a year too soon for them. I do think they have a hell of a chance of causing an upset against Dublin, and it's fantastic
they probably are 5-1 in all. If the All-Ireland final is tomorrow, well, okay, so it wouldn't be tomorrow. You'd have seen exactly how well they were playing and who's good and whether or not Clifford's made it and where they're playing James and like what the team situation is. Would they be as big as 5-1 in a All-Ireland final against Dublin?
Probably not. You see, the thing is, it's worth having that bet now, because if they get to the All-Ireland final, they're obviously going to be 2 or 3-1.
There is another bet that you can have. Senior Football Provincial to win the Provincial and All-Ireland double in 2018 with Buzz. Kerry are 7-1.
Well, you may as well take that.
That's a much better bet.
May as well take that. It's like, they're obviously, Cork are a far better team than last year. I think it's a year too soon for Cork to beat Kerry, and I think it's a year too soon for Kerry to beat Dublin. That's how I see it going this year. I see Kerry getting to the All-Ireland final and losing to Dublin. Like, at the same time, when it comes to a one-off game, the fact that they're not in Dublin side of the draw when it comes to the Super 8, assuming they win Munster, is a fantastic thing. In a one-off game in Croke Park, the last time they played them in Croke Park, they beat them. Granted, it was only the league, but it was still a league final. It was late enough to read into it a little bit. They have got over that hoodoo to a certain extent because of how unbelievably happy they were that day, that 100% they have a chance because it'll be a one-off game. They don't have to play them in the Super 8 and then potentially again in the All-Ireland.
We had James O'Donoghue and Colin Cooper in together in studio yesterday. We're going to play that out tomorrow. We were talking about where, afterwards we were just chatting, like, where does he play this year and what is the starting lineup of forwards? When you start to go through the forwards that Kerry have, they have an unbelievable array of talent available to them at the moment. And if you were to think about that properly, and if they can find a way to utilise talent like O'Donoghue and Clifford and Sean O'Shea and Paul Ganey and Donaghy, like, and that's just, somebody's definitely going to be on the bench, but like all of a sudden, if they're fit, and it's a huge if, but if they were all to be fit for most of the year, like, that's the best forward line in the country.
Well, like, I'm all up for playing up that forward line, but is it better than Dublin's? Really?
Well, no Connolly this year. No Connolly to ride to the rescue.
I don't really care about no Connolly. Like,
well, they needed him last year for the last 35 minutes of the entire season. It came down to having a fully fit Dermot Connolly to be able to come on and, like, be smart enough to win that game.
Like, you're talking about Mannion and O'Callaghan versus Ganey and O'Donoghue. Ganey and O'Donoghue better on their day, potentially, But I keep going back to this point. Paul Mannion is going to be the player that we turn around in September and say, crap, we didn't realise he could be this good. We all knew he could be good. I mean, he was starting for Jim Gavin, but...
When was O'Donoghue, when was James O'Donoghue last available, fully fit and had a full season? When he was Footballer of the Year, right?
Trying to think. Probably was. You're talking a full season, June to September.
And so Mannion is sensational, and like we have seen him, the absolute peak of him. He's got pace and power that few other forwards in the country have that combination. But like, let's see him be fully fit for an entire year, and is that better than the guile that you get with James O'Donoghue?
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made there that Kerry are better in the forwards. There is no argument that Dublin are better in the backs, and that is what will ultimately win Dublin the All-Ireland this year. It's as simple as that. Kerry just aren't, or they haven't proven enough, particularly in that full back line, to be defensively sound enough. The half-back line can be outstanding. It is one of their best lines on the pitch, but the Andy Moore nightmares will always give us cause for consternation going into this summer.
Isle Cody says, don't forget Sean O'Shea. We didn't, because obviously he's been sensational and he's their number 11 for the year.
He probably will be. Like, we will put the point to James O'Donoghue about him potentially being 11 and whether or not he sees a future for him there. But I think it's going to be Sean O'Shea this year for sure.
Gooch was definitely saying it's Sean O'Shea. Just a couple of quick points from tweets from yesterday's show. James Dunn says, I went on a Path to Freedom binge last night after the show yesterday. Top class. You need to do a Path to Freedom binge.
Okay, let's do it.
And then Path to Freedom, your best show to come out of Ireland. Keep love, hate, also good. My brother served Jeremy, the posh bloke, in the bar in New York. Gave him the big fan. He replied, thanks. That's the guy from Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey is very popular. No Path to Freedom though. He was blown away and thrilled. So there you go.
Okay, that Path to Freedom, is it on Netflix?
I doubt it.
I don't have Netflix anyway, so I don't know why I asked that.
Is that your pitch for getting free Netflix from the Netflix people?
Yeah, please, Netflix people, you know where I'm at.
He's an influencer now, so you've got to give it to him.
Yeah, hashtag Netflix, hashtag Spawn. Is that all your newspapers, or do you have more to talk about?
Did I have another one? I probably did have a couple more, actually. Yeah, so the Examiner on the road somewhere. Leaside trip holds no fears for Limerick, insists Kylie. This is going to be, I think this is probably the hurling game of the weekend. Obviously, given the injuries that Waterford have suffered, that's not exactly sticking my neck out. But Limerick's sensational. I'm going to speak with Cian Lynch a little bit later on in the show. And then another interesting Kieran Shannon column on the back of that. It's one of the cruelties of sport. The higher you go, the greater the scrutiny. This is basically on the back of LeBron dragging the Cleveland Cavaliers through to his 7th finals in a row, or his 8th finals? 7th? 8. So 8 now. And making the point that every time he loses, people hold it against him as a reason why he's not as good as Michael Jordan. But there were years that Jordan didn't make the finals, and so he gets a free pass for those years. Like, he reached 6 finals, won 6, and so therefore he's better than somebody who reaches 8 finals and loses 6 potentially. It's Joe Montana, Tom Brady. Tom Brady has reached 7 Super Bowls, won 5, lost 2. Montana was 4-0, and so therefore Montana's better because he never lost Super Bowl. It's like, it's not really how it works. The silver medal is also important.
Yeah, I think the Brady-Montana debate is a little bit more clear cut though, isn't it? I think it's hard to argue against Brady on 100%,
that one. I think, even as a Niners fan. But the other thing there was making the point that Mayo obviously have been relevant and have been in the arena and have actually tried to win All-Irelands. He draws a comparison between Derry and Meath, who were at a fairly similar level to Mayo when James Horan took over, and lo and behold, Mayo still where they are, still relevant, still an interested party when it comes to the All-Ireland series. But
it's a good point. You've only got to go back 7 years until you actually find Mayo fading into irrelevance.
Yeah,
really. I can remember watching them in Croke Park in 2011, and they were terrible. I wasn't even nervous when that game. No, Kerry beat them in 2011.
No, but Longford beat them in a qualifier.
That was
Don O'Mahony.
2000 and
Don O'Mahony's last year. It's the first year before. It was
2010.
It was the year before.
Yeah.
It was Longford, wasn't it?
Longford, yeah.
Pictures of Mohamed Salah going through Valencia Airport. He's gone to Spain. They have the best medics in the world in Spain to prepare for the World Cup. I would like to go to Spain. I'm not feeling very well today. Maybe I could go to Spain and get whatever it is that Mo Salah's getting, and I would come in tomorrow and I'd be happy to go to work.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to go to work anyway. But get in touch with us here. Drop us a tweet at @OffTheBallAM.
On the back of the Herald this morning, the headline says, "We have to stop the rot." That's Shane Duffy's quote there. The defender is aiming to end his losing streak. Good news if you're a Dublin hurling fan. Conal Keaney is back and he's fit. They're playing Offaly this weekend, a crucial game really. The loser of that game is likely to get relegated from the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. Dublin, you'd make them relatively healthy favourites. The 35-year-old back in tow again. It's his first appearance since that brilliant performance really against Kilkenny in the first round of the Leinster round robin. He's in excellent form and really hope for all 35-year-olds out there that they could get back playing, and it's also a good endorsement for the old sabbatical as well. But he's come back looking like a fresh man.
Dublin 7-1 on.
So, oh wow.
Yeah.
Right, I don't think it would be that healthy.
Yeah. It has to be, right? Offaly faded badly.
They were terrible last weekend, of course. But
3 lads sent off.
Yeah.
You know, that's what happens.
It's 7-1 on, wow. On the back of the Mirror this morning, it is "You Won't Be Sorry." Blues told to pay £7 million compensation, but Guardiola reckons he's worth it. That is, of course, the Napoli manager who Chelsea been told to pay up for. Napoli boss, who of course he is currently the Napoli boss, Pep, is insisting you won't be sorry if you sign Sarri.
Napoli have appointed Carlo Ancelotti.
Sorry, yeah, he's gone from Napoli.
Yeah, and yet he still has 2 years left on his deal. It's like, what? Why do I pay compensation? You've already replaced him.
It's just, it doesn't matter what personal preference is. There's just a wheel here. It's like Ancelotti is coming right back to Chelsea. Sarri will go on somewhere else, and Ancelotti will be in there next season or the season after. Probably
closer.
2 years.
Definitely getting closer.
On the back of the Star, it's third time lucky. Guardiola said to finally land his man Mahrez. That'd be an interesting signing for Manchester City this year, because I don't really feel they need Riyad Mahrez at this point. I don't really feel Riyad Mahrez is deserving of a transfer to the Premier League's best team. You've also got Pat's the job for Frankie. Frank de Dettori is looking forward to a massive run in Saturday's Epsom derby on Hazapur after taking some advice from Pat Smullen. So, you know, Frankie de Dettori and Pat Smullen have had a conversation. Therefore, Frankie de Dettori is now an improved jockey, apparently. Jose moves for Dallo. So they're looking to capture their first signing of the summer. They're looking to sign this guy, Diogo Dallo, who's a right back. So the full back issue at Manchester United looking to be...
He's a kid. He's like, hasn't had a full season as a first team player at Porto, and they're spending 20 million quid on him. Oh, that's the buyout clause. So
yeah, 19 years old. The other story as well that's doing the rounds in GAA circles, the headline here is Deisha drained by KO blows. Waterford are screwed. They've got like... They've got a hospital full of people waiting to get back onto the pitch, and with suspensions as well at this point, they're in big trouble. If they manage to get out of that Munster group, it'll be an achievement in itself. On the back of the Sun, it is I want you to score and win, Ireland versus USA. So that's, you know, it's Uncle Sam and it's Uncle Martin O'Neill really. There's not much more needs to be said about that. The scoring issues have been well documented at this point. We don't have a goal scorer. Can they score against the United States of America at home on Saturday?
Also not going to the World Cup, the USA.
So yeah, like it's a drab encounter between two sides who really don't care. They just want to get on.
You'll have tickets to give away on tomorrow's show, Owen.
But that's... Like, I mean, it's the Republic of Ireland. Let's try and build this up into an amazing spectacle.
8 minutes past 8.
Bruce Springsteen is playing or something like that.
Is that it? What's happening? Why is it 8 minutes past 8? Does anyone know why it's kicking off at 8 minutes past 8?
I actually don't know. I presume there is some sort of sensible reason for that.
Dan had a reason on Twitter, which we're going to dig out.
It's tennis leading the way in the UK pages this morning. On the back page of The Guardian, it's courting attention. That's Kyle Edmund, who cruised into the second round of the French Open yesterday. He beat Alex de Minaur, but Serena Williams provided the highlight. She was back in action yesterday. She's on the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section. Serena's return. Katsuya, the tennis legend, wins Grand Slam comeback match.
And also the FA standby Sterling and gun tattoo controversy. Headline you never thought you'd read on the front of the Telegraph. My favourite tweet about the whole thing yesterday was... a picture of the tattoo and a picture of Peter Crouch. And I was like, oh, he's got he's got a tattoo of Peter Crouch. It was Crouchy doing his robot dance.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, had the gun been touched up in the tattoo, because it was like exactly like Peter Crouch.
It was amazing. There was a great shout by whoever spotted that on Twitter. Twitter was actually a strangely beautiful place yesterday, because everybody was roundly supporting Raheem Sterling, and there was a lot of funny content that actually didn't divide the internet, except for one Piers M, who like.
There it is. There, look. You're like,
it's an amazing chat.
Has it been touched up? I mean, I don't think it has. It's like, it's almost exactly the same. No, it hasn't been touched up.
Just looks like Peter Crouch wearing a flat cap. That's all really. Like we need more tattoos of footballers doing celebrations.
That would be class. Who would you get?
Probably just I'd get like kind of, I suppose, the 3-pronged attack of Robbie Keane's cartwheel and somersault. So the first tattoo would be 3 tattoos. first one would be the cartwheel.
Triptych, if you want.
Exactly.
A bacon style.
Yeah, the second one would be the little roly-poly, and then the third one would be him
Shooting.
Yeah.
Oh, gun controversy.
It'd be under the sock. I'd be smarter than Raheem Sterling.
You should do that for your Instagram story later.
Yeah,
what, the
definitely.
celebration or the tattoos? Go and get the tattoos for your Instagram story.
Oh yeah, good shout.
That would definitely be. We'll chip in a £5 each, I'd say.
Oh, nice one. That should do the trick.